Good afternoon, everybody. It's Tanya again. Today we're going to do a lesson called His Only Son. And so we're going to sort of pick up from yesterday's lesson that was about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the covenant. We're going to begin. We're going through a lot of Genesis. And so I'm just going to pick out a few scriptures and read from them, but discuss whole chapters, and y'all can see my notes. I'll post them as I always do. But chapter 12, verse 1 through 3 says, Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. And so Genesis 12 is the calling. Abram, who is Abraham later on, was in the country of Haran until the age of 75, when God came to him and commanded that he leave that homeland for an unknown territory. So Abram took his wife Sarai, who later becomes Sarah, Lot, his brother's son, and their belongings, and went forth on their journey. He came to a place of Sichem, the plain of Moreh, and this is where they stayed for a while. God appeared to Abram and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land. Abram built an altar and called upon the name of the Lord. And they journeyed on into Egypt, where Abram lied about Sarai, being his wife, told them that she was his sister. Then God plagued Egypt, and Abram had to tell the Egyptians the truth, and this was because of Sarai's beauty. Then they left out of Egypt because they were sent away. Moving on to Genesis chapter, we're going to be touching base on 15, 16, and 17, but I'm going to read from 16. It says, Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judged between me and thee. And so these chapters are all about the covenant and the promises. The Lord came to Abram again and said, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. Abram said, I go childless, for he did not understand what was to come. Sarai offered up her handmaiden Hagar to give Abram an heir. She believed in Abram that much. This was after spending 10 years in the land of Canaan. So Hagar conceived a child, and this displeased Sarai, even after she had given Hagar to her husband. So Sarai sent her away out of her sight, and the angel of the Lord appeared to Hagar and told her to name the child Ishmael. It was told to her that Ishmael will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Abram was 86 years old. And when Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him again, and the covenant was made. His name was changed to Abraham. He will become the father of many nations. Kings shall come from thee. And this is how the circumcision for the male babies was told. And just a note, Abraham, Ishmael, and all the men that were that were servants to Abraham at that time were circumcised at that age. Don't you know that was painful? Sarai's name was changed to Sarah, and it was foretold that Isaac would be born. God also took care of Ishmael, who later on became the father of 12 princes. And there's a handout that I have got here for y'all that's going to be in my notes, and it tells about those 12 princes. So moving on, Genesis 18 and 21. It's Isaac's birth and Hagar's exile. And the Lord visited Sarah, and he said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. And so Sarah laughed when Abraham told her that she would have a child in her old age. And Abraham asked her, is there anything too hard for the Lord? The Lord visited Sarah, and she did conceive. And Isaac was born and circumcised at 8 days old. Sarah saw Hagar mocking her son, so she told Abraham to cast them out. This bothered Abraham because Ishmael was his son. But God told him that Isaac shall thy seed be called, and Ishmael will have a nation since he was of thy seed. So Abraham sent Hagar and Ishmael away into the wilderness. So God said to Hagar that I will make him a great nation. He opened her eyes to a well of water because she thought that Ishmael was going to die because they were out of water. And again, referring to this handout that'll be in the notes, God didn't forget about Ishmael. He wasn't the son of the covenant like Isaac was, but he did make him a father of nations. So God kept his promise to Abraham, and he did father 12 sons. And you'll see that in that handout. Moving on to chapter 22 is the binding of Isaac. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham and said unto him, Abraham, he said, behold, here I am. And he said, take now thy son, thine only son, Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. And so years later, God said to Abraham to take Isaac to the land of Moriah and to offer him as a burnt offering. It was a 3-day journey there. So this is my note. Can you imagine how he felt during that journey, knowing that he would have to sacrifice his son? That had to be some type of faith. So Isaac asked his father where the lamb was that would be sacrificed, and Abraham told him that God would provide one for them. Then he bound Isaac and laid him on the altar. The angel of the Lord called unto him and said not to lay a hand upon the lad. His testament of faith, having feared God, saved his son. And behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns, and that became the burnt offering that day. And so Isaac was blessed that day to multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven and as the sand upon the seashore. All nations of the earth will be blessed. And so moving on to Romans 4 and 16, it says, therefore it is of faith that it might be by grace, to the end the promise might be sure to all the seed, not to that only which is of the law, but to that also which is of the faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. And so it reminds us of the covenant to keep faith. It's all by God's grace and to the end. So my note is we have to endure all of this until the end. And so moving on to Hebrews 11, 17, and 18, it says, by faith Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac, and he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said that in Isaac shall thy seed be called. So it tells about the abundance of faith that Abraham had in the Lord because he was willing to give his only son. Remember, the name of the lesson is his only son, meaning the son that God had promised him to be a sacrifice and a true testament of faith. And so a recap of all of this is the calling Abraham done as he was told. The covenant and promises, even through the years he had faith. Isaac's birth and Hagar's exile was a blessing and hardships. And the binding of Isaac was the ultimate testing of faith. And so how faith turns into blessing is how God remembers all of us and all of those covenants and promises. And Isaac goes on to father Jacob, which is the 12 sons of Israel. And that's what we talked about yesterday. And I'm going to leave y'all with this. I hope that y'all enjoyed this message and how it comes together. When I figured it out, I cried. And so one of the favorite verses in the Bible that everybody knows is John 3:16. And it says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." So John 3:16, his own Son.